The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered,
"Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. We have to do the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world."
When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and smeared the clay on his eyes, and said to him,
"Go wash in the pool of Siloam,"
which meant sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Someone said, "It is." But others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said,
"I am."
So they said to him, "How were your eyes opened?" He replied,
"The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went there and washed and was able to see."
And they said to him, "Where is he?" He said,
"I don't know."
They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them,
"He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see."
So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him, since he opened your eyes?" He said,
"He is a prophet."
Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight until they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. They asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" His parents answered and said, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as the Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, "He is of age. Question him." So the second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied,
"If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind, and now I see."
So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them,
"I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?"
They ridiculed him and said, "You are not that man's disciples. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from." The man answered and said to them,
"This is what is so amazing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything."
They answered and said to him, You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said,
"Do you believe in the Son of Man?"
He answered and said,
"Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?"
"You have seen him. The one speaking to you is he."
He said,
"I do believe, Lord."
and he worshiped him. And then Jesus said,
"I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind."
Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not also blind, are we?" Jesus said to them,
"If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, 'We see,' so your sin remains." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
"I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see." Those words from that wonderful hymn, Amazing Grace, to me speak of what we're doing all during this journey of Lent. They are themes we find throughout the scriptures for these Sundays of Lent: light and darkness, life and death, blindness and sight, sin, forgiveness. And in the Gospels, in a lot of the scriptures, they all are just about synonymous for the same thing: moving from our way to God's way, moving from seeing the world as we see it to seeing the world as God sees it, moving from our own willfulness to doing the will of God. It's our Lenten journey. Everything we do in Lent, our prayer, our fasting, our works of charity, are all meant to guide us on that journey from darkness to light. And during Lent, we're given a wonderful opportunity to see that. In just a few moments, as you saw last week, again you will see this week and next week, our elect, those men and women who are preparing themselves for baptism, will stand before us and be given a special blessing by the Church to remind us that they are on a journey from darkness to light, from blindness to sight. Now, these scrutinies, many people ask me, what are these scrutinies? They come from the old days of the Church, from the first days of the Church, when people who were approaching the Church were coming steeped deep in paganism. These really were exorcisms to cast out the evil spirits of that paganism. Now, I really doubt that any of you over there are hardcore pagans and really need the devil cast out of you. But the prayers are a reminder that they are moving from the darkness of life in the world to the light of the salvation that Jesus brings to them. And it's not just a reminder for them, it's a reminder for all of us. Sometimes we think, well, we've gone through baptism, we've been enlightened, there's no more darkness and light in our life. To say that means there's no more sin in our life, no more need for forgiveness. But we know that's not true. Yes, the light of the Lord has enveloped us in baptism, but the darkness of the world, the darkness of sin, keeps encroaching on us. We need to be reminded that we too are on a journey. What these men and women are doing is just beginning a journey. When they step into that baptismal pool on Easter Sunday, on Easter Vigil night, they are only beginning their journey. It's not the end of it, it's just the beginning of it. We continue on that. And that first reading reminds us of that. Here we have that first reading. Here we have Samuel, the great prophet of God, who hears the very voice of God and speaks it to the people. Most of us would say, that man is not living in darkness. He's certainly living in light. But look at what happens. God sees that Saul has failed as the king of Israel. And God says to Samuel, Saul can no longer be my king. I need you to find a new king, to anoint this new king. Go to Jesse's house, and there you will find the one that I have chosen. So Samuel goes to Jesse's house, and he immediately approaches Jesse's oldest son, the logical choice. Who else is going to be king? The oldest son in this great family of Jesse. But God says, no, it's not him. Keep looking. And he goes to the second son, and the third son, and the fourth, and so forth, down to the seventh son, and it's not the seventh son. Finally, Samuel's exasperated, turns to Jesse and said, you got any more kids? God said to come here, and one of them's going to be king. And Jesse says, well, there's Dave. He's out in the backyard. He's tending the sheep, playing his music. You don't really want to see him. Samuel says, send him in. He's the only one left. And David comes in, this young boy, this young kid, who knows how old he was, 10, 11, 12, who knows how old he was at this point in time. With his little harp playing there, he's out playing with the sheep. And he comes in, and God says, this is the one, the least likely one. This is the one I want for my king. And Samuel understands that he now has to see as God sees. God is seeing something different than we. We're seeing a little kid, the bratty little kid out in the back playing. I'm sure the 7 older brothers were saying, him? But God says, I see differently. And chooses him and anoints him to be one of the greatest kings in the history of Israel. God doesn't see the way we do. God sees very differently. And our journey through Lent is a call to see as God sees. Not only to see others as God sees, but to see ourselves as God sees. So that we can come to the light. We can't acknowledge the light if we don't acknowledge the darkness. If we don't understand the light, we'll never admit that we live in darkness. So these scrutinies that we do are certainly for the elect, the catechumens, but they are also for us to remind us so that we don't end up like the Pharisees. The Pharisees, look in the gospel. It happens all the time in the gospel. The person who is blind sees and understands the presence of God in Jesus. Excuse me, the people who can see, the Pharisees, the scribes, completely refuse. What's that old song? There is none so blind as the one who will not see. Jesus says, if you could not see, there would be no sin, but you can see, and therefore you remain in sin. Let us ask the Lord today, as we bless these catechumens, these elect, let us ask the Lord that we may be cured of our blindness. Maybe it's not complete blindness. Maybe we only need a little divine lenses or divine contacts to see a little clearer, but to help us to see as God sees, not as the world sees.